In this video, we're going to be building a React framework, and this is kind of the basic outcome that we're going to end up with. It's maybe easier to take a look at requests. So here, you'll see this taking a full second. This is to demonstrate that we're actually fetching data on the backend and rendering it there. We'll get into how that works in a bit. And then we load up a React application and then we hydrate it on the front end. And so here you can see that this timestamp was created on the server, as was this one. And that second in between was time that we waited on the server. But then you can see that interactivity actually works with there's a useState attached to this button. And we're going to do all that using Bun as our JavaScript runtime, and I'll show you why we're doing that. It kind of gives us a bundler that we are using actually on the server side as well. Some of you might be wondering why. A lot of this is primarily educational for sure, of just kind of understanding how existing ones work at all. But I'd say I personally have kind of found frustration with the existing options. I'm extremely picky about how I want things to work. And so I'd like to kind of share how these work so that other people have more of a chance to try using them in their own way rather than being stuck with what's out there. So pretty famously, the new React docs have suggested that if you're going to start using React, you start using it with some React-powered framework. The first one being Next.js, Remix, Gatsby, yada, yada, yada. I could have opinions on that, but that's all fine. It's kind of just that seems to be where the trend is going. But what's really not mentioned here is, hey, you could actually build your own, and that might suit your needs better. Okay, let's jump into some code. Turn this from total scratch, and I have, so that's not what I want. I have some notes to help me follow along. So we'll do a bun init. Just the defaults are fine. Gives us this guy. We can run it to confirm that it's all good. And nice thing I like about Bun is it's pretty quick to start up a server. And then here, for now, we'll just return a not found. And then status 404. We'll kind of just build this up incrementally. So now if we run this, actually I need to give it a port. And I like to have the option to change it, so we'll put that there. Okay, so that's now running. If we go here, we can see we get the not found. So there we have. We have the basic starting server. And next we'll create I meant to call this, let's rename this to server.ts. I don't know why that all of a sudden made a complaint. Okay. And then we'll create an index. And this is more of your kind of your index HTML that you would normally have. But you'll see in a bit why it's nice having it in TSX in a second. Oops. And body, and then we'll create a root div. And then we'll preemptively put in, so the way this is going to work is it's going to load up a bundled script index.js, which we'll get to in a bit. And then we defer it. Why are you? Oh, you're complaining because I need to add types. So dev at types, React at types, React DOM is what we'll need. And now we might as well add React and React DOM. Okay, so we'll need those to actually render this. And if we come over here now, we can import that guy. You don't need that. And then we'll also import React DOM server render to string. And what does that give us? So now here, it's a request here, and we can get the, I actually just want the path name. Oh boy. Okay. And so if path name, yep. It's complaining because we need to return a response, and that response is going to be, oh, look at that guy. It knew instantly. This is complaining now because this is not a TSX file, which once we change it, Bun will automatically know how to deal with that. So we take that file, we render to string, we give a response, specify HTML. Let's change this command to a watch. And now we change the name of the file, yep. So now it'll reload anytime there's actually a change. And we reload, nothing shows up, but if we take a look at the response, it's that file that we actually have. And now you'll see we get a 404 for the index.js. So how is that going to work? Well, we're going to have a browser entry. And I'm still not sold on this exact method, but it works, and I'll probably evolve it a little bit over time. And what this is going to do is it's going to hydrate this root. And it's going to take a little bit of back and forth to kind of explain what that means. And I wonder if we should start with, we'll come back to this one. Let's actually just create App.tsx. And so this will be some default function. Oops. And start that with just a hello world. And basically what we want, that's going to load that up, and that's going to hydrate that root K. And so what we actually want to do is we're going to throw that guy here. And then children, we might need to do it this way, I forget, and we need to specify that children is an actual prop. And then this guy will go here. Now, figured I would get that wrong. Export your component from the file it's defined in. Great. Oh, we need to grab the default. Perfect. So now, despite the fact that we're not actually loading up React, we have a React component working. And again, you can see that here, it's actually rendered that component right inside. But if I were to, say, put in a const, yep, it got it right there. Fine, doesn't matter. I don't even need to use it. Import. I think this should still complain right away. So if I reload, okay, fine, it just ignored it. Let's say I had a on click. Hello, and then this will be count. And by count, I mean state. Um, oh, I am mistaken. This was already here. If I had thrown that same thing inside the index, that's where we'd have a problem. So here, that's interesting. I used to have problems with that, and apparently now I don't. Hmm. Okay, I'm mistaken. Let's just pretend that didn't exist. Probably cut that out. Remove all of that. Bring us back to hello world. Okay. So now we have our index that wraps app essentially. And what we want is the, we essentially need to create this bundle because right now there's no interactivity. So right now it's just the hello world. And in order to do that, we need to bring that app in, and then we'll also bring in hydrate root. And so yeah, and then root. Okay, so this is going to complain. We haven't done anything with it yet. This will actually work because it gets bundled. So right now it's listening to this TypeScript config, which is not actually what ends up getting used. So for now, you could ignore it. It's probably possible that we could try changing lib. Let's just see. Okay, we'll just ignore it. So then we want to bundle that entry point, and that's where Bun is going to come further in handy. So Bun has a built-in bundler, and what we'll do is if the path name equals this, then what we're going to do is bun.build. I really wish you would stop making all that red. Okay. Put, and then you specify the entry point, and that entry point is going to be that. And if I'm thinking straight, that's the main bit that we need there. And then what we can do is we can just get the text of that. And we also need to specify its content type. Now, 500K, what did I miss? Failed to open directory source. Oh, because Copilot led me astray. Okay, so now you can see this is the final bundled JavaScript. So now we have our main route fetches the HTML, renders it off of this component, and this JavaScript file, when requested, it bundles it on the request. And if you have a look at the timing of this, let's see, 25 milliseconds for that response. That's 25 seconds to bundle the JavaScript, which is, for development purposes, totally fine. On a server, you'd probably want that to get cached, like in production, but we're not going to deal with that. And finally, oh, actually, we've already successfully hydrated the root. We're not getting any errors, so this is working, but to confirm it's working, we need to bring in something that's actually is client side. So and let's update this to be, we'll have a button, specifies the count, and on click count. Yep. And why didn't you auto import? Thank you. So this confirms that the hydrate root is actually hydrating this correctly so that the interactivity is picked up. And the last kind of piece of this, we can go lots of layers deeper, but one of the key things I wanted out of my personal framework is the ability to fetch asynchronous data on the server, have it populated right away in the server-side rendered response, and then get it hydrated after the fact. This helps you avoid running a bunch of use effects in your components themselves that are just fetching data when you can just populate that on the server itself. So here we'll borrow from Next.js, their get server side props. And I mean, not quite what I would do. Let's change this to, so we'll pass in some props, and those props will be a start time and an end time. And what we'll do is we'll make this an asynchronous function. And so goes new date. Twice the string, I think, is fine. Right in between, we'll put no wait. I wish that were that easy. Wait, new promise. Get out of here. Okay, and then we pass this as the callback. So it's going to wait 1 second, call the resolve, and then we're going to pass both of these as props to this function. And then here we'll have a props.start time. And oops, that's not where I want that. I should probably make this bigger. I've been told that multiple times. Equals. Okay, so finally, where does that leave us? Built that. Okay, so now nobody's calling this function, so we need to do something about that. And here in the server, we've already required this, so if we actually want, let's still call it app, and we'll instead do component equals default. And then what we'll do is server side props equals app. And I'm intentionally using require here. We won't get into it in this video, but what you could do here is follow again a similar next style or convention where depending on the path name, you actually load up a different component. And so you could then dynamically change which component you're loading here. And as long as it has this function defined, it's going to work. And so we call this app.getServerSide props, and then pass those along, but it's stored inside there. And this will actually be, I'll make this a capital C because it's nicer. That might be wrong, but let's find out. It took a second. Okay, cool. Hydration failed because oh, perfect. This is exactly the last piece that I wanted to go over. So see in that first little bit, it did show up. And so you'll see here that we have the correct response initially. But what ends up happening is our hydrate is loading up app from the browser entry. But see here, you can see there's no props. And so these are no longer defined, and that's why they don't show up. And so we need to do one more last piece, which is to bring in these props and make them available to our client-side React application. And in order to do that, we are going to pass these props as initial data to our index. And so we'll start here and then we'll pass it along. So here we'll have some initial data, and this can just be any because it's going to depend on the component itself. But in order to generically handle it, we'll bring in a script and Copilot's already got my back. So we'll define initial data and then we'll stringify this and we'll toss that inside here. And so now this becomes globally available. And again, so now we can pass in that initial data. Okay, but now nobody's using it. So here inside our browser entry, we now can access that initial data. It already knows. And then we put in a, is that what it is? App initial data props, I think so. And let's see how we did. There it is. So now the errors from React have gone away. We can see these numbers showing up, which are the ones that were originally rendered on the server. We can confirm that here, 855, 856, and 13, 14. But now, all of a sudden, this button is actually interactive. And I think that pretty much concludes what I wanted to cover. So just kind of a recap here. Start with the server, and that's one of the things that I like most about this setup is you have, while there are multiple entry points, they all kind of get bundled into the server here. And so this is the only thing that you need to run, the only thing you need to think about. And so the first request any browser is going to make is this one. And we're going to load up a component, and then we're going to get the server-side props. And then we're going to render that to HTML on the server side itself. And that will help with your SEO, your response times, yada, yada, yada. And then once that thing is rendered, it's going to request this index.js file. And that's going to trigger this guy, which is going to end up bundling from our browser entry, giving that all back as the JavaScript, and that browser entry is, again, loading up that same inner component, grabbing the initial data that we defined here, and hydrating the root. And so the root is this guy. And so that's hydrating this element. And that's pretty much it. And so in 36, 41, it's probably under 100 lines of code. We have the start of a React framework with some of the main pieces I would suggest and recommend having. Obviously, lately, the React server components has been a pretty hot topic. I made another video. I'll probably try to link it here for how that works, and eventually maybe I'll combine the two into this new framework. But really, even if you did use it, it wouldn't change much of how any of this works. And so you could start with something like this and integrate that later on when you actually need it. But I would say most applications would work reasonably well with just a basic like ability to render server-side React and have it hydrated on the front end. That'll cover most of your cases. So thanks for watching. That's all I got for today.